Cheryl is one of those that I'm also excited to hear from tonight. Um, we just love Adam and Cheryl and the whole family, and I know a lot of you do because a lot of you drove up the pass to come support them, which is great. But Cheryl's also one of those on Tuesday night that, like, when she speaks, I'm listening because it's always amazing. And I always just want to say, I just want to hear more from you. And so I'm delighted that you said yes to this because we want to hear from you. You got great things to share. So, yeah.
Is my microphone working? Okay. I'm going to start a timer. Try to help myself. Okay, so I spent a lot of time praying and just asking Jesus what I should share tonight, because for anybody who knows me, this is so far beyond my comfort zone, it's miles away. But I knew I needed to say yes because these Snapchats are some of my favorite nights, and just to get different people's voices up here is so important. So I knew I needed to say yes, and he would help me and guide me along, and he just kept telling me to share my voice, and that wasn't very specific. And so I was like, okay, yep, I'm going to talk. And so just to share some of my life with you all, because as we're growing in relationship with a lot of you, I know a lot of you don't know a lot of my history and background. So I'm from Napanee, Indiana, born and raised in the cornfields. My parents were both raised Amish, but never joined the church. So I just have a large extended family that all basically still lives within a few square miles of each other. My brother was 18 months younger than me, and my sister's 8 years younger than me. Growing up, our home life was pretty rocky. My parents came to a relationship with Jesus, which is why they never joined the Amish church, but their marriage was very tumultuous all along, and just a lot of coldness, distance, fighting, and they divorced when I was 15, but really it wasn't, it was bad all along my childhood. So I grew up very shy, extremely timid, and never felt like I fit in very well, which was hard when I had an extremely gregarious younger brother who was only a year behind me in school that everybody loved, and he got invited to like the popular kids in my grades parties and things, and I'd go pick him up there from them, but it was not me who was invited to the parties, it was always him. And I was always jealous of how easily he fit in and seemed to just flourish in our church. It was a pretty charismatic church that I grew up in, and he just fit in and flowed. He was part of the worship team, and I was always just jealous at how easy he made everything seem. And I grew up knowing God loved me and having a relationship with him all along, but still having a lot of insecurities and doubt in that, and always was jealous of anyone who seemed comfortable with their relationship with him. And I should say that it was in fourth grade that Adam moved to my school. And my first distinct memory of him was him and Alex fighting on the playground, punching each other. And if someone had told me, fourth grade me, what my future held, I would have been horrified. It would have been shocking. But growing up, I always knew I wanted to be a mom. That was like, I just wanted my own family. I wanted to be a mom. That was just my big dream. In high school, I worked a little bit for a tax preparer, made some pretty good money for a high schooler, and thought, you know what, accounting is very practical. I could use it and be a mom. So I decided that was where I was going to go to college for. I was the first one in my family to graduate high school. My parents only had an 8th grade education, and I decided I was going to go to college too. And I was the first one to graduate college in my family also. And so Adam waited until our senior year to ask me out on a date. and I really liked him. But I did not want to date him because he was moving to Colorado. And all of my family still lives in the same area. I was never going to live anywhere else. It felt very serious to get into a relationship with Adam because he was a really great guy and I really liked him. So it wasn't just a casual dating, it would have been very serious. So I went on some dates but didn't want to really commit to a relationship because it felt too scary. And with him moving so soon, just seemed too hard. But he convinced me. And we decided to do long distance dating for our freshman year of college, and that was a nightmare. It was so hard being apart from each other and trying to have, because we were still fairly new in our relationship. And he said, "You need to transfer to Colorado." And I said, "I will not move across the country for a boyfriend." So he came home over Thanksgiving break and proposed. So we were married after our freshman year of college. And I did go to Colorado because if he was committed enough to marry me, I would move for him. But we were always going to go back to Indiana because that was the only place I ever really wanted to live. College is fine, but Indiana was home with my family and everyone there. And he was totally okay with that. Yeah, we'll move back. But it became very obvious very early on he wanted to stay in Colorado once we were married. And I was like, "You said we would go back to Indiana." And it was just this constant tension because he loved Colorado. He didn't want to move anywhere, and I hated Colorado. I didn't want to live here anymore. It was in Gunnison. The winters were brutal, and it was very isolating. I grew up in such a big family, and everybody was so close, and I just felt very alone. And I did not enjoy Colorado at all. So graduation was coming, time to look for jobs, and he convinced me with a year of work then it would be easier to get jobs back in Indiana. So we should just work for a year in Colorado. And I said, "This is it. I will give you that 1 year of us working, but then you said you would." And it was just this tension because we always, like, being on different pages about something so important, where you live, was a lot of strain on a very, very young marriage. And we came to Colorado Springs because he got his job offer first, and I found a job too, and started working full time. Both of us got our CPA licenses and things, and it was such a tension because he wanted to go. And finally, I was like, "Okay, God, I am so tired of being on different pages about this. I'm giving it to you. You have to change someone's heart in this because we're on such different pages." And I thought because I was being the mature one, he would for sure change Adam's heart. But he didn't. He changed my heart, and I fell in love with Colorado Springs. So all of a sudden, I was like, I don't want to move back to Indiana anymore. I feel like this is home. This is where we're putting roots down. This is where I want to have my family and things like that. So it was a big shock to me. He even had a job offer to go to Indianapolis. They wanted him to move to Indiana. And I said, "No, we shouldn't do that." And so I was like, "Okay, yeah, no, he changed my heart. That's definitely how he did it." So I was working as an auditor and tax preparer, but really I just wanted to be a mom. And it took us a little longer than we planned on, but in 2011 we had our Evelyn. And I got to quit my job and become a stay-at-home mom, which was my dream, but it was actually an extremely challenging season for us and me. And it felt very hard for me because I felt very alone, and I was like, "Why, God, this was my dream. Why should something that I've literally always dreamed of feel so isolating and alone?" And at that time, the church we were going to we basically stopped going because it was pretty theologically sound and doctrine, and we read through the Bible verse by verse, but there was just a lot of law and no joy, but there was a lot of pride and like arrogance about, "Oh, well, those other churches, you have to worry about them and things." And so we in late in 2013 was when some friends of ours invited us to a house church that they were becoming part of. And I was so desperate for people. that I was like, Adam, I really want to go. And he was so anti-people. He's like, no, it sounds like a nightmare. And I mean, he wouldn't even want to go to a normal church service, much less somewhere where you're just in people's, like in a house and talking to people. And so we went. I had a great evening meeting these people. Adam was with the guys, and so we were leaving, and I said, well, how was your evening? Expecting him to tell me how much he hated. He goes, I had a really good time. And I was floored because that was so not in his character. And so we started attending the house church, and that was really, being around them was the start of us actually understanding grace, like really in a transformative way that brings life, not just quoting the Bible and the scriptures and things, like actually having a relationship that brings life and joy into your life, and relationships and community like we had never had. And that same time, I was really excited to share this with my brother Mark, because he, who had always been so passionate for Jesus and on fire during college, started questioning everything. Is there a God? Is there all these things? And we'd have these conversations, and it was awesome because he would open up and talk to me about the doubts he had, which was not allowed in the community we grew up in. I mean, with the Amish, and like, you can't question if there's a God. Like, you can't doubt anything. Like, those questions are like that are not allowed. And it was just really nice to talk. Like, and he's like, I still, pray in tongues because it brings me peace, because he was struggling. So like, he had all these questions, but he didn't have peace not believing in God. And so I really was excited as I was starting to understand grace better. I was like, okay, I'm going to be able to actually share real, like the gospel is actually good news. And I didn't know that. And so I was excited to share this. But on February 22nd, 2014, I got the phone call I never expected, that my brother had committed suicide. So we just seems to keep coming up in these conversations. So, though I knew he didn't have peace, I didn't know the depth. He was very good at hiding, because he was such a outgoing, uplifting person. He hid his depression extremely well from everyone. And it was such a shock for our family. And I was like, oh, that I saw he didn't have peace, but I thought that was what was going to bring him back to truth. I didn't know, he hid the depths of that from all of us. And so February 22nd was this day that just just completely shattered our world. And we went back to Indiana right away. We left that day, started driving, and we got back surrounded. The support of the community and our family and friends was just enormous, especially for my parents, all the love and support they got. And when it came time for his funeral, they told us they were going to seat the family soon, and like they had everybody else in there, and they were about to seat us in the front, and I was dreading it because I didn't even want to go in, but so I was hiding in the bathroom a little bit, and I was washing my hands, and I was like, God, I don't even know what to ask for right now. Like, I don't even know what to pray, and just out of nowhere, he just spoke the name Samuel Mark to me, and I was like, whoa, that was just out of nowhere. And I was like, I knew Samuel had a meaning, and when I looked it up, it means God has heard or asked of God. And now those of you who know our family know how this story ends, but at the time I was like, I don't know what this promise means, but it was clearly a promise. And we wanted more children, always. We were wanting more children even then, and it wasn't happening, but I was like, okay, this is a promise, and it feels like a promised child for our family. And so I got to tell my family about it, and I said, I don't know exactly how this is going to work, but God really spoke to me, and he clearly heard me, and he promised me this name, but I didn't know how it was going to work out. So as time went by, in 2015, we had our Lydia Grace, who everybody knows and loves, and she just brings so much joy, but she was clearly not Samuel. And so we kept trying. I had a miscarriage in 2017, and the years kept going by, and I was like, I don't know what this, I don't know how you're going to do this, God, but I just held on. I just believed very strongly that this was such a promise from God that I could rest in that. And in the summer of 2018, at that time we were attending the Rock Church up in Castle Rock. And I had an extremely vivid dream, which I never remember my dreams. I am jealous of people who do. They just leave right away, and I don't hold on to them. But I had a dream that we were in church, and they did an altar call, and they said any women who are having reproductive issues, anything like that, to come forward for prayer. And so I was like, oh, that's me. I'm going to go, because we've been trying for years. And when I got up there, the man started praying for me, and he put his hand on my stomach, and he stopped, and he goes, you're pregnant already. And I woke up, and I was like, whoa, that was intense. And I took a pregnancy test, and it was positive, and I was pregnant already. And so I was like, okay, so this one, maybe this is our Samuel Mark. And we did a ultrasound to find out when my due date was. And they like, okay, you're about 6 weeks along, and your due date is February 22nd. And I was like, whoa, God, okay. I was just in awe, and I was like, okay, this is going to kind of hit like a landmine to my family. Like, they'll be so excited I'm pregnant, but when I share my due date, it's going to hit differently than telling them about my other pregnancies. And I was like, I'm pretty confident this is going to be a little boy with that due date. And sure enough, we got to find out he was a boy. And all through the pregnancy, I just kept, okay, God, I don't know. Most babies don't come on their due dates, but I think this one's going to, because everything was just lining up so perfectly. So February 2019 comes around. I have my dad come out. I was like, Dad, I'm pretty sure he's going to come on his due date. Can you be out here to watch the girls? So when he comes, we can just go to the hospital. And all of the 21st, I was walking. I was like, okay, he's going to come. And I had one little baby contraction. I thought, I'm going to go over. I don't know if he's going to come on the 22nd or not. And so we went to bed that night, and I was feeling a little discouraged, thinking that it wasn't going to happen because I wasn't having any signs. And I woke up at 11:45 p.m. and I was like, whoa, it's happening. So I told Adam that he could sleep a little longer. I was going to take a shower, but I couldn't even make it to the shower. I was like, nope, we got to go to the hospital. And I got to send all of my family messages for them to see that it was starting. And it was such a unique experience. So that day is such a hard day. And to experience labor on it, where you are having tremendous pain, but it is a process, and it is bringing in life, felt so healing and so right as a way to grieve and like have it, but like he was coming, and it was time, and it was very therapeutic on that day to experience labor. And at 6:02 a.m., Samuel Mark Smith made his debut on February 22nd, exactly 5 years from the day I lost my brother. And all 9 pounds, 6 ounces of him. He was huge. And so now, like, my family has it's still a bit of a disjoint on that day because we have our grief, but we also have this tremendous blessing. And Sam brings life everywhere he goes, and he is just a true blessing to everyone, and especially to my family. Like, he was a promise. He was absolutely a promise in my life, and I feel like it just shows how redemptive God is. That, like, not only did he redeem such a deep loss, he did, like, I always wanted to be a mom, and so to do it, like, through one of my children feels so intimate, the way he knows me and loves me. And yeah. So, yeah, now you know a bit of my journey.
So good. Thank you for being so vulnerable with us and opening up your heart to share. It's really tremendous. So much of that I didn't know, but amazing, amazing. So, Ronnie wants to be first up again. So, go ahead, Ronnie.
Thanks for sharing that. That was awesome.
You're welcome.
In the beginning of your talk, you were mentioning you were praying that God would change Adam,
Yes.
and he ended up changing you.
Yes.
I was curious if there's anything else that's happened in your life that was similar, where you asked God to do something and you ended up being the one that changed.
I feel like in small ways it happens all the time, because there's something, when you really give something to God, there's a humbleness in that you're okaying however he's going to work. And so that's one of the biggest, like, strongest ways he's done it. But I feel like it happens a lot in relationships.
Thanks.
In your relationship with Adam, you've already just told us about a couple of times where God's changed your life or changed your mind.
Mm-hmm.
How do you go about conflict in your marriage? Do you and not just decisions, like decisions that you have to make and so forth?
I feel like a lot of it is, what I tend to want to do is follow the peace. Like, if it's something, thankfully there hasn't been lots of big issues that we haven't been on I think in general with big issues we've been on the same page. There hasn't been like a lot where it was like a big issue. It's usually small things, but to just, a lot of little ones. And so I think, it's something we could definitely do better about too, but just to try to follow the peace and maybe even seek things separately to come back together and try again if we're not on the same page about things. But
the other question, I know a little bit about your finances, that you guys are financial free.
Mm-hmm.
How did that come about? Is it something that you were grown up in,
or
is it, and as a couple?
So I feel like I would naturally have been the saver in any relationship except with him. Compared to him, I'm not the saver in the relationship, but if I'd been married to anybody else, I have a more frugal thing too, but compared to him, I look, ridiculous, like a ridiculous spender. So that was a lot of Adam's, like, kind of directing it there. But for me, the ultimate goal was to be a stay-at-home mom. And so I could get behind that because the goal was the freedom for me to not have to work. And that was so important to me that it wasn't hard to follow, it was hard to follow some of the things he did, but not in general, to save and be. He was very cheap.
But a lot of couples, they just can't see themselves with a one person earning the money.
Yeah.
So it's good to have an example. It can be done.
It can, and I would say it would have been a lot harder, like, if I hadn't just so strongly wanted to stay home with the kids. It would have been much harder for me to kind of scale back on some of the things and work around things like that.
Hey, great job.
Thank you.
It was so good. Thanks for sharing everything. I loved it. Okay, I'm going to collide from the first guy who was talking about oneness, and anyone who knows me knows I love that topic. I'm like, yeah. And often what comes up with oneness is the benefits of oneness, the results, the fruit, versus the intentionality. To me, it's relationship. It always comes back to, like, us just being with him and him being with us, which leads me actually to my question for you, because you shared so much of your story. And I would love to hear just different aspects through your journey, whatever you want to share, of through this process of life, who you've received Jesus to be for yourself. Like if you were talking to us about Jesus and you were introducing us to a new friend, like who has this friend been for you, in this process?
So, I mean, one of the biggest things for me is he is my redeemer. Like he never wanted Mark to commit suicide. He was, Satan comes to steal, kill, and destroy. It was not his will, like that Mark made that decision. But he loves us so much, he was not going to not redeem like the hardest thing that I've had to walk through. So I just feel like, and it was such an intimate redemption for me. So it just like he knows me so well that he knew this would be the ultimate redemption in my life, is another child and to give me Sam. So he is a redeemer through and through.
So you guys do a really good job. You and Adam seem to do a really good job raising your kids. And we thank you for that. It's a wonderful picture. What we see may be different than what happens elsewhere. Maybe. I don't know. So I didn't know that you had an accounting background.
I'm a CPA also.
Go nerdy.
Yeah. Very, very
So,
nerdy.
Generally, accountants can be, the right word is anal.
Yes, he has all of that.
He is. Well, okay. So part of my question primarily is, with that mindset or the personality trait, et cetera, that comes along with that, how do you have such grace with your kids? What is it? Did you feel that there was ever a change, or you just automatically have grace?
I don't know. I feel like I've always been a nurturer. Like dreaming of having kids and things was just always my goal. Like accounting was picked because it fit with being a mom. It was not. I was never career driven in the slightest. So it was about the other career that I strongly considered for a while was being a teacher, because then you have the teacher's schedule, which goes well with being a mom. So that's.
Hey, Cheryl. I would love to know how you've seen the most growth or maturing since you've been with Adam. And then for Adam, and then for yourself. And then I would love to see, where have you guys, in what part of your life were you guys the closest?
So growth, I mean, we were 19 and had no idea what we were doing when we got married. Like, I can't believe nobody even said, like, are you Christ crazy? Like, you're kids. Nobody, no, Adam's brother questioned. One person said, like, you guys are nuts. And we were moving across the country. We were, from our reception, my wedding reception was a bunch of crying because we were leaving that day for Colorado. My sister was bawling, and it was a mess. It was a big mess. So the growth we've had together is just, we knew nothing, had nothing. Mm-hmm. We had no jobs. We were he already done his freshman year out there. I was transferring, so we were going to go to school, but we had nothing. And we knew nothing. And so, the most matured, I just don't even know, because it's like a completely different person. We've been married 19 years now. So it's I don't even recognize the person he was. Or that I was, really. And so, but when we've been the closest, I feel like we have seasons and times, but when I see how far we've come, it just astounds me in our lives, because it's this growth that I just never saw. And I didn't have a healthy picture of marriage or anything like that. So not that it's been easy, Not that it's always been good, but it's steady, I guess, and that we can like look back and just be in awe of how far. Yes, he was a Pharisee for a long, like that was, and so it was a lot of law, a lot of legalistic, a lot of head knowledge, a lot of death, really, in seasons, like from just no joy, I would say, for times, but it's by the grace of Jesus, we've come very far. How do I hear God? So there have been a few times, like when he spoke Samuel Mark to me, it. I don't know that it was audible, but it was so loud and so clear that it was like, whoa, and it was so out of nowhere. So, but most of the time when I hear God, it's a sense I have that I have come to realize is from him. They call it the still quiet voice, and I just know sometimes. And it just comes with time and believing that it is him and growth.
Awesome. Great question, honey. Thank you. Yeah. Great job, Cheryl. As I knew it would be, always good to hear from you. And again, thanks for just sharing your heart with us. What a blessing.